sketch a little bit about some of the details of the structure of the organization of this I would say externally funded effort in the state of Missouri to get this amendment through.
Yeah,
and it is really quite massive, quite startlingly so.
It is. Yeah, and I'll also take the liberty with your question to tell you kind of where our campaign is, just so you know we do have some structure, because if I tell you just the other side, it sounds so awesome, big and powerful. People say, well, shoot, we can't beat them. So I think it's important to also kind of paint the picture of what we've been able to do in a quick fashion here in the state of Missouri. The organizations that are supporting the Right to Farm national movement it's channeled as one of the model legislations through the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. Some of the very largest corporations fund ALEC. The Koch brothers fund ALEC. It is one of their model bills that they are attempting to get passed nationally. The funding sources come from some of the largest pharmaceutical companies. 60 to 80%, depending on who you believe, the pharmaceuticals, antibiotics manufactured in the United States goes to animal agriculture. The Pew Institute, the Charitable Trust did their study and clearly indicate that the overuse of antibiotics is going to eventually just kill us. And the major overuse of antibiotics is occurring within animal agriculture. So you see the pharmaceuticals engaging in this because they do not want to see limits placed upon the use of antibiotics. You see companies such as Monsanto and not wanting to see restrictions. They are putting funding in because they do not want to see restrictions on the ability to sell genetically modified organisms. The rice growers in the Boot Hill are with us opposing this because they have a market for non-GMO rice. And they sued Monsanto and won. If this passes, they believe that if they have to sue again, they'll lose. Because they'll lose the right to have reasonable safeguards for their grains and for their products. They won't be able to get setbacks, and so they'll cross-contaminate. And Monsanto they began this bill by saying, preserve modern technology. That was purely Monsanto's language, to preserve the right to genetically modify organisms and be able to plant those, continue to own the seed, and control that seed. So they're funders of this effort in a large way. Your large vertically integrated animal agriculture folks, your Cargills and the other types are heavily investing in this because they want that one-size-fits-all, so they can just have a footprint and plant a 10,000 sow unit in this state, this county, and that county. So they're adamantly pushing this and is part of it. They have come together under the umbrella of something in Missouri called Missouri Farmers Care. They're the ones running the ads on TV. Missouri Farmers Care is an association of corporations and associations. It also includes the major commodity groups, the soybean growers, the corn growers, pork producers, and cattlemen. So they've come together under this umbrella in our state. They work nationally on a national scope, and in our state they work under that umbrella group along with the Farm Bureau as part of that as well. Missouri Farmers Care. And so they have mass. They'll outspend us probably 2-to-1. We feel pretty good about that, by the way. We keep up 2-to-1. That's not a bad day. Candor can tell you that you can actually get outspent, you can outspend 5-to-1 and still lose. So, we feel pretty good. Our movement, it's really kind of become a movement. This week we really see a movement. I have a young man that works with us as a spokesperson. His job is to go and talk to all the Democrat organizations. We have one that talks to Republican organizations. We're invited a lot less to the Republican organizations, but we do have good Republicans with us opposing this. So, but we are invited more to the Democrat ones, and typically we've been seeing 25, 30 people come in the rural areas. Last night in Clinton, Missouri, over 125, we counted 125 and there were more coming in, people showed up to Democrats to oppose Constitutional Amendment number 1. So we see this growing group of people. The Good Food movement has really engaged this issue. I gave a speech a few days ago in Springfield, I had Tea Party state representative candidates in the room cheering, and I had Democrat state representative candidates on the other side. They weren't together, but they were in the same room, all opposing this. So we do see this growth. We have about 18 official organizations, which the Sierra Club, you go to votenoon1.com, you'll see the Sierra Club logo on that page, along with several other organizations, to include the League of Women Voters. So we've masked these 18 organizations. We have 2 other organizations that have chosen not to put their logo on the page, but are also on all the phone calls for coalition development. The other identified one I'll just mention is the Farmers Union in Missouri is with us. The Farm Bureau is supporting it. Of those 18 groups, we have over 300,000 followers on our social media platforms. 451,000 is the win number. We have 451,000 knows we win. And we're talking to 300,000 people on a regular basis through the platforms. Dad Cochran claims his victory in a U.S. Senate primary was due to Facebook posts. We will win this because the people are engaged. We'll be on TV. Our TV will go up Friday. Richard Oswald, the president of the Missouri Farmers Union, was kind enough to voice our ad and to be the image on it, or to just stood in front of a camera from his barn and just talked to us. And so it's a very straight on kind of ad, nothing fancy. We didn't think it needed to be. So we will have somewure around $450,000 to $500,000 that we have raised to oppose this. They could easily just keep spending, so we didn't. We wrote a plan that we thought would work. We think we're on track to do it. We're proud to be part of it with the Sierra Club. There's another side note I would like to say and take the liberty to. I want to reiterate what I first said. One of the most exciting things for Joe Maxwell, and Terry knows this, I've been around, I call me an old, we're all getting to be old timers, and you and I talked about that earlier this evening too. But I can't remember a time when and I'm a populist kind of person. I ran as a populist. I was always out there with the people, and that's how I won. And I started campaigning with other candidates in '82. I've never seen more excitement and growth in the field, as we say, out with the people, than on this issue. People are really finding the ability to put aside differences and come together. And it's around food. It's around food, and it's a great piece to talk about. I mean, that brings the farmer. I mean, the traditional farmer takes pride, not that every farmer, but the traditional ones take pride in doing it as good stewards of the land. They care about the animal, they care about the land. But if they're talking about food, they can put aside their differences and sit there and talk to Greenpeace. You know, which not long ago, I remember every farmer would maybe spit on the ground. You know what I'm saying? More out of fear and ignorance. In the same way with these other. And I've not seen a greater opportunity for us as a people to seize our moment and tell the greed and the corporations and others that you may have more money, you may have these great national networks, but we are the people. This is our Constitution, and we're going to push back.
You spent many years in the Missouri legislature, and I'd like to ask you a question about whether or not you think either Amendment 1 or 7 would have been proposed by the legislature during your time. And if not, what has changed that would bring this type of legislation before the people?
I don't want to break too many rules of the campaign trail, which is you don't worry about picking your fights, but the way you phrase that, I think I can do that. Neither one of these initiatives would have been on the ballot when I was in the legislature. What we now see in this country is things that Thomas Jefferson, James Madison warned us of. When Citizens United was, that opinion was issued, Justice Kennedy just screwed it up. It's kind of the final stages of giving corporations the rights that people have. And Thomas Jefferson, in a letter in 1812, warned us that unrestricted corporations would be a greater threat to our republic than the standing armies of our enemy. Madison warned us that if we allowed them to continue and assimilate this power and the rights under the Constitution, they would be no different than the landed wealthy for which we had left England to get away from. What we see the difference today is that this money, these decisions made by the Supreme Court, that's why the corporations will gain power over the family farmer, because they have been extended rights, and now they want to be in our state constitution. And they now have so much influence over both parties. It's bipartisan how much influence they have. The money that Smithfield put in the coffers of these legislators to get that exemption to own 50,000 acres of Missouri land was bipartisan. And it was like my hogs at the trough. Representative Rybold was to debate me in Joplin. He got a phone call from Missouri Farmers Care. Not a phone call from his citizens. Not even a phone call from the citizens of this state. A phone call from an association of gosh darn corporations who have pumped money into his campaign. He's the chair of the Ag Committee in the Missouri House. He put this on the ballot, at least his part as the House sponsor. They called him and said, "Don't debate Joe Maxwell." And he did it. When corporations have so much power that they can pick up the phone and tell a legislator to deny the public an open discussion on an issue that will impact their state constitution, says exactly why they can put these things on the ballot. It's a disgrace what has happened in a bipartisan way. I'm proud of Missouri's Food for America because we're bipartisan. We welcome Republicans, Independents, Democrats. We've got to make a difference. We've got to stand up as a people. On your issue, to suggest that a business can have its tractor trailer roll across this state and somebody who never even gets on a road and buys groceries in this state and feeds their family in this state pay for that is somewhat absurd. I'm sure you'll talk about that tonight, and I'll try not. I always say only pick one campaign at a time, but that's the best I'll do for you on that. Yes.
Yeah, I did have one question based on the question I got when I was talking to people about the amendment. On the issue with foreign ownership of land, you mentioned that this could open the door for more foreign ownership of land. Does it, by passing the constitutional amendment, does it immediately negate the laws we have in place, or will those have to go to court?
They will go to court.
Okay.
We know that there are 3 areas that will be quickly tested in the courts. One, the puppy millers have clearly said that they're going to test the Prop B language if this passes. It's in print. It's their intent. Coster, Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau's language talks about how, we have limited a form of animal agriculture in this state. They don't say puppy mills. That's not farming. I don't care. God love my neighbors but they think they're farming dogs. They're just wrong. We don't farm dogs in this state. We raise puppies.
It's not wrong. The puppy mill is just a dog cave farm.
Well,
Dog cave.
well, trust as a farmer, I don't farm companion animals. You raise puppies and kittens, and so they're just wrong. But that is a law they'll immediately test. It's also been announced, and as Coster said today in Springfield, the intent is to not have, in 2010 he's quoted, over the Arrow Rock issue. He was pushing the appeal so that the CAFO would be built in Arrow Rock. You all may recall that's a local issue. And he said there shouldn't be 400 or 500 different sets of rules. There should just be one. So the local control issue will be tested in our courts, as the large corporations just want to have a footprint that they can just take anywhere in the country and lay down. And then the foreign ownership. Currently, we know of at least 2 companies that are foreign-owned are landlocked. And so if they're going to have growth, they'll test the courts. It is true that just because you pass the constitutional amendment does not mean those laws all go away. What it does, it puts every agricultural law or safeguard or restriction, however you want to phrase that, in question.
Okay.
It would require someone to take legal action to test that. And those 3 are the 3 that are most likely to be tested based upon reports in the press over this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, yes, ma'am.
If you could tell someone one thing about this that you don't think that they're understanding, what would it be? And like you mentioned earlier, a lot of times maybe the other side is labeling Sierra Club or your organization as like the enemy. So if you could say one thing that would maybe correct that image, what do you think would make an impact with voters?
I think the first thing I would tell a voter, more just on the front end, is this is not about an individual farmer or an individual's rights. It's about whether or not corporations will have the same rights as does individuals today. And that decision will be made in their constitution, and that's a serious matter. Even though it was placed on a primary, everyone needs to vote. The first thing they need to understand, it is an expansion for corporates to have additional rights that they currently do not have. For us being the enemy, when the other side, they have a responsibility and an obligation to educate the public why this is necessary. If their only explanation is Joe Maxwell's a bad guy and he's your enemy, odds are they don't have a good reason you ought to vote for this. So don't fall in that trap where you have to defend that. You put that back on them and say, look, it doesn't matter whether the Sierra Club's a good thing or not a good thing. What I'm asking you is, why in the world should I vote for this? And if their only answer is that everybody that's opposing you are your enemy, then that's just insanity. Don't let them take you there. That's a false argument that we good people, I'll speak for Democrats, not the Sierra Club, I'll speak for Democrats as a whole, not saying every Sierra Club member is a Democrat, but we have a bad habit of over-answering the question. We think we've got to explain that. This is not our amendment. We don't have to explain it. They do. Mm-hmm. It's there. They want us to change our Constitution. It is beholding upon them to tell me why. And if it's just because Joe's a bad guy, heck, people took me on many a time. It's all right, but that has nothing to do with it. We can talk about that after the election. Well, I want to thank you all. Here's what you can do. Tonight, you were already asked to make your calls. Make your calls. Make your calls. Talk to your neighbors. According to our polling, 10 to 14% of the people, no matter how much money we spend and the other side spends, 10 to 14% are going to walk in that door on election day and not have a clue what they should do. So make your calls. Make sure everybody you know knows what to do. And finally, if you can work a poll, work a poll. Coalition's putting those together to have poll workers to talk to the voters when they walk in, just to remind them to vote no. Thank you all very much for letting me be here. Thank you, Paul.